Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. In this episode, I'm joined by two members of the Access Networks executive team, Hagai Feiner and Bryce Nordstrand. Access Networks, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a company founded 17 years ago to focus exclusively on helping custom integrators create the highest quality network solutions for their homeowner clients. Hagai, who founded the company and has served as CEO for 17 years, recently passed the baton to Bryce, who has worked alongside Hagai for the past 8 years. The executive transition is the result of a year's worth of preparation following a meeting between my two guests 2 years ago that I really want to touch on. Hagai remains president of the company and is already broadening his horizons into some cool new adventures. And Bryce hasn't wasted any time making his mark in his new role. Gentlemen, Happy New Year, and thanks for joining me.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jeremy.
Thanks. Hagai, I wanted to start with you. You've been on my list of people that I wanted to have on the podcast for a while, but I guess it took a big executive change here to finally make it happen. When I heard the story of this, how this transition kind of kicked off with a performance review 2 years ago, I really thought that was a great place to start. Can you recall the question that you asked Bryce and what he said in response to you during that performance review?
Sure, it's actually a vivid memory for me where we're sitting in this interview and I'm talking to Bryce about the year and what he's done and where he wants to go. And I asked him, so what do you want to do next? Where do you see yourself in the next few years? What does Access look like? And how do you fit into the organization? And he just gave me that stare back and lifted one eyebrow and said, well, what do you want to do? And so answering the question with a question, I was kind of perplexed because what I want to do have to do with what he wants to do? And of course, my reaction was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I want to be CEO. And so I laughed in my seat. At first, I thought maybe he's not serious, but then I realized he is serious.
Okay.
And then I really started thinking about what it is that I want to do. And I thought that it would be, first of all, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think that's really the bottom line here. A lot of us go about life not thinking maybe, we shouldn't ask for something because it's never going to happen, or, doubting our ability to get something done or go where we want to go. And Bryce wasn't afraid to do that. And I'm very proud of him for expressing how he felt, what he wanted to do, and also creating essentially that position, if you will, for himself as someone who's the runner-up, where let's say the rest of my executive team never really expressed that interest and maybe didn't want to take on that role because there's a lot that's involved and a lot of weight on your shoulders. And so, and in that moment, I really thought about what does this future look like for me? And I thought, that would be a good thing to aspire to. And so what I decided to do is agree that there will be a transition, not necessarily pinning a point in time on when that's going to happen, really wanting to see how the business evolved so that we would have the platform to create the transition. And Bryce has proved to be, the best man for the job. And in a lot of ways, it was very natural because I used to operate in a very different way. And I think the business has evolved from a mom and pop sole proprietor into having an executive team, that has transparency and has the ability to have a say in decision making. A lot of that happened after we bought the Easton building. That was my sole decision. In hindsight, it was probably a mistake to just go and see a building on the other side of the country and decide that I'm going to buy it 10 minutes after I toured it. And I came back and I said, hey, we have a new building. And everybody was like, well, what do you mean? We have a new building, but a forklift is not going to fit in there. I said, well, but it's historic and it's in downtown Easton. Well, how much money we're going to need to spend to renovate this thing? Of course, the budget blew up 3 times what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
and it was a pivotal moment for us because it challenged my ability to continue and lead in the style that I did, which was just Hagai makes the decisions. He's the owner, he makes the decisions, versus running those ideas by other people that maybe would help me yield a better result and also make people feel like they're part of the process instead of having people feel like something was forced on them.
Right.
I've learned from that event in 2017, and it actually made the process with Bryce a lot easier because that mindset of having transparency, providing transparency, has been pervasive with me ever since. And so bring Bryce in, talking to him about, how we grow the business, what I do personally, where I'm going, what I want to buy, what I want to do, has been very easy since that point. And so it allowed for this process to be a lot easier, on top of the fact that he's just the right man for the job.
Well, Bryce, I want to throw it to you. That was a super bold thing to say in a performance review 2 years ago. But obviously you had something in your mind about how you could, take that role and run with it. So what made you so confident back then with that statement?
I don't think it was, I guess it was confident to say it, but I think what I looked at is, and what I normally do when I'm in most of these situations, is I look at it and I say, okay, well, I have this particular issue or this particular thing going on. How do I get resolution to that? How do I get to the next level? And what I saw was what I've seen in myself from owning businesses over the years with Hagai, which was not boredom, but just the point where you get in when you're owning a business where you say to yourself, I don't know if I want to do this every day anymore. And I saw that based on what he was doing, buying buildings and that kind of thing. Like it was pretty obvious that he had other interests, and those were starting to overpower how much attention he would provide Access Networks. Okay. And that's okay. That's fine. But I recognize that in the moment. And I thought to myself, I'm having a good review right now, so why not just throw this thing out there and see what happens? So that's what I did. And as Hagai mentioned, there was no timeline. There was no point in time where we both left that conversation. I mean, I don't think we really talked about it for almost another year after that. It was kind of like, we had that conversation. It had been put out there, and Hagai may have talked about it with him, internally or with his wife or whatever the case may be, but we didn't really. But I think what happened at that point, from my point of view, is that Hagai started to release a little bit more to me, with not necessarily making the big decisions for the company, which are always ultimately his, but really going forward with where we're going to take the business. What's the next iteration of Access Networks look like? And I'm not making those decisions solely either. It's a team effort. It's an executive team. It's, as Hagai stated, everybody has a voice in that room. But really kind of starting to figure out, how do we get to the next level? How do we make sure there's no ceiling? How do we get past that ceiling, if there is a ceiling, and move forward with our plan? And it's not that Hagai is not capable of doing that. He absolutely is. It's that he has other passions and interests. And luckily for him, I think he has somebody that he could pass that baton to and take on those things for himself as well.
Yeah. And Hagai, you must have noticed something in Bryce back maybe before that conversation or around that time. I read in your note that he got the Atlas Award at a company retreat or meeting that you had. And that's a great name for the award, because you said he was taking a lot on his shoulders, I guess, like Atlas, the
whole burden of the company of being able to create a successful business process that then supports our clients and encourages growth. In return, allows us to hire more people. The entire business cycle was really on his shoulders. The technical prowess that we have was on the engineering side of it, but to go and sell it to somebody, that's really in Bryce's wheelhouse. And so I thought, I knew the conversations we were having. So let's say when we were wrapping up construction in the beginning of 2018, we had the most awkward grand opening that we could ever have, because it was a grand opening of an office that I wanted. not anyone else. And the burden for paying for this office was not on me. It was really on Bryce.
Mm.
And it was, I took him and threw him into this trench and said, all right, now climb out. And he did, and we did ultimately.
Mm.
So I feel like in everything that he's done historically, he's always taken ownership in those tasks, and he never complained. There were obviously arguments over why did you do that, which now I won't do again. But again, we all grow, right? I'm not a perfect being, and the way I've done it yesterday is not the way I'm going to do it tomorrow. Excuse me. And I've learned from that process, and I think it's part of how we got here, right? So those challenging moments in an organically grown business where decisions are made, they have long-term impact. Luckily, that was, you could say it was luck. It was a good gamble to open that office in Easton, in that building, paid off in dividends. And we have such an incredible team there that really made this possible. But I've seen Bryce operate in hardship, and I knew that I could, in good times and bad times, I could rely on him with my eyes shut and know that he will do the right thing. Even if I didn't say anything about something, the action Bryce would take is probably the action that I would take. So we're very, very synced on that level.
Now, Bryce, do you think in retrospect that the seems like this is a major turning point, this building it keeps coming up. You worked through it, you made it a good decision in the end with a lot of hard work, it sounds like, and restructuring and things to pay for it. But did you see the idea was good, but it was just maybe not that building, or maybe the timing was weird, or?
So there was lots of conflict when the announcement was made that that's what we were doing. but you know what, there was a point, and there was a few cocktails involved, I think, but there was a point when we were in Easton, and it was actually during the grand opening celebration. And Hagai and I were talking, and I pulled him aside and I said, I get it.
Okay.
And I think that was kind of the turning point for me, where I kind of like, okay, I get why he did this. I get why we went through the conflict we went through, and I get the vision. And sometimes somebody else's vision, it takes a while to comprehend that. It takes a while to embrace that. And it was a while that this had been going on. And, but at that point in time, and even probably before I said it to him, I got it. I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, there's lots of things we could have done differently. Sure. Absolutely. There's lots of decisions we could have made different. Hindsight's 20/20, no matter what, where you're at in life. So did he make the wrong decision? I don't think so. Did he make the decision that was his to make? He absolutely did. Did he make a decision that caused conflicts? Absolutely. Are we all better for it? Absolutely. We all came out of that, all of that better for it. So, and that's all you can hope for.
Yeah. So Hagai, let's talk about some of these outside interests that Bryce was observing that you are into and maybe would want to explore more. Obviously, you've been a vital member of the CEDIA board over the years and had a lot of CEDIA volunteerism, but I saw you on a panel the other day, a virtual panel, Josh AI organized panel, that you were talking about doing some just explore the country kind of stuff. Like, is that what you haven't been able to do because you've been running the company for so long, or other stuff?
Well, I guess you could say that I would have been able to do that, and I never took the time. I always flew somewhere on some exotic vacation or went to see my family in Israel. But, the pandemic really changed my mindset as far as what do I want to do, especially knowing that all of this is happening on the access front. Where am I going to go, and what am I going to do that I feel like I haven't done until now? And what I haven't done is just explore the United States. And I've done this to some degree by flying places. So I went to Montana, actually courtesy of Bryce, that got us a really cool opportunity there to stay in an incredible house and do some incredible things. But I wanted to do more of that. And I know that the United States is absolutely stunning. And so what I also wanted to do is take the path of not just go to a hotel, stay somewhere and do the touristy thing, but really go and stay somewhere on a mountain, off-roading, create some new things for myself that I haven't done before. And so that's part of the intent this year, is to really go out there and explore. I bought a truck. I could buy any other vehicle, but I decided to buy a 4x4, and it's big, it's it's comfortable, and I'm going to be out there really trying to make up for the opportunities that I didn't take in years past, because I was so focused on, buying a building in Easton and flying there every week to make sure everything goes the way it should. But again, I think on one end, you make an investment in a business, in a team, in infrastructure. And if you are going in the right direction with the business, then ultimately you'll be able to enjoy the results and the fruits of that labor. And so it's not just for myself. I look for all of our team members to enjoy the same. So we actually, as time has gone by and our business has evolved, we put our off time at a premium, which means we expect you to disconnect when you're disconnecting. And I'm the biggest violator, I think, of that rule, because I never disconnect. I fly to Israel and I'm still, on my cell phone and emailing, and people need stuff, and accounting wants to verify wire transfers, and I'll do that. But the time is coming where I'm going to really hand that off and be off the grid.
So I get to be on all the time.
Yeah. There you go. I was going to ask now, you brought up COVID, and obviously all businesses have changed the way they work. And does that make this transition easier or harder because of the virtual aspects of everything right now, and not being maybe in an office together with people? Bryce, so what do you think about that? Any way to gauge whether this would have been harder, easier if you were in normal times?
Well, I mean, we're a pretty spread out company to begin with.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the business and the nature of our team. I mean, we have network engineers that wouldn't have been in either one of our offices.
Okay.
They work virtually. Luckily, we're a network company, so it's easily scalable for us. But the reality is that, there is some of that I'm probably missing. The in-person conversations, the water cooler talk, that kind of thing. We are heavily invested in using Slack, which I know a lot of companies use Slack. So that's kind of where the water cooler talk happens, the off the cuff conversations. But I'm going to make it a point and have started that process of initiating conversations with every person in the company to really, not have it be a business conversation. Just, tell me what makes you tick. Tell me what's your hobby? Because I didn't interview a lot of the people in the company. They weren't my responsibility. So I need to make that connection. And in order to do that, I have to work at that. I can't just assume that that's going to happen, especially the way we work now, which is virtual. I've got to dedicate the time for that. And that's my plan.
Okay. Well, I want to continue our conversation. But first, we need to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
This episode of Residential Tech Talks is brought to you by Ring, home security systems and smart home automation. Get protection at every corner with their intelligent security cameras, alarm systems, and video doorbells. Receive notifications when motion is detected, or check on your home anytime with Live View in the Ring app. Help keep your neighborhood safer with the Neighbors app to share information and discuss safety concerns in this hyper-local social networking platform. Ring's mission is simple: make neighborhoods safer. Discover all the smart home security products by Ring. Go to ring.com.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Hagai Feiner and Bryce Nordstrand from ARCC Networks. What is the biggest technical challenge right now for your company in terms of what you're working on helping integrators with in terms of the network? And I know network security is as big of a topic as ever. A major attack recently that may not have affected directly any of our homeowner clients out there, but it's showing that there's still a lot of vulnerabilities out there. Are you guys really focused on security stuff? What is it that kind of drives what you're developing solutions for with your network gear? If you want to take the lead on that one, Bryce, since you're in the hot seat now.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to make sure that who you were directing that at. So security is obviously one of the major I wouldn't want to call it a conundrum, but it's one of the things that we are working on daily to perfect. What we've done historically as a company is taken enterprise grade network solutions and applied them to the residential market. Now that's not an easy task, especially beyond just the technical side of it, meaning we have very, very talented people that create our specifications and follow a process and do the configurations and deploy the systems and support the systems. We have an incredible team of people that do that. But one of the biggest challenges in that is actually taking that information and tailoring it and crafting it in a way so that an integrator can go have that conversation with a homeowner. Why are these things important? And we've been working on that for years. I don't think it's perfect, but I think we've done a really good job of that messaging, right? We've taken it. Nothing's ever perfect. We can always do better. The cybersecurity side of this is like a whole nother version of that. And it's vastly wider, meaning it's not, when you're talking about product and specification and Wi-Fi performance and network performance, it's a very tight niche.
Right.
When you start talking about cybersecurity and InfoSec as a whole, meaning the concept of security where people are involved, or people are the outside element and forces that can create a problem for a network. When you start talking about those things, it's a much bigger concept to try and how do we craft this? How do we take this information and present it to an integration company and then have them be able to present that to the homeowner? That's the challenge. And when we get to a point where we're comfortable that has been accomplished, that will be kind of the next kind of telltale sign of our growth cycle as a company. Like it'll kind of be like the next catapult for us. We're close. We're really close to being there. We're that's going to happen. Crafting that and having that message complete where we feel comfortable that it's there, that's going to happen this year. So we are really close to it, but we've been working on it for years. It's not a simple thing. It's very difficult to do.
How much has this company evolved, Hagai, since you founded it? What was the original vision of what you thought this company would be and where it is today with these new challenges that you couldn't have probably imagined back then?
So that's a good question, Jeremy. I think coming into the industry, I saw the battle that the integrator had on a job site connecting everything. Back then in 2002, the entire Crestron home system was based on RS-232 serial communications, and everything went over those lines, those connecting cables. And I thought that Ethernet and Wi-Fi are going to win the connectivity game. That was really the bet. And that there was no discipline within the AV world doing the IT work to allow for those things to connect in that way. There's only one product connecting to the network, which was the Crestron processor in that house. And from that point, it took until 2003, maybe 2010, to start seeing real success in building those networks and creating kind of a fast-moving machine that keeps shooting out pre-configured networks into the channel. And the iPhone, I'm sure, as everybody remembers, in 2007 gave us a big push. Where then the iPad, when devices started becoming ubiquitous that need Wi-Fi, and that's the only mean that they're going to use to communicate with the outside world, that drove our business. And at the same time, meeting Ruckus in 2007 and having Ruckus really focus on transmitting video over Wi-Fi, that was their challenge. I was really amazed with what they could do in 2007, and they still have that advantage today. And going from a one-man show into a 2 and 3 person operation was very different. When we add a team member today, it's a very different process, and it's also a very different impact. Where when I was just a one-man show, every additional person was just like, it meant worlds of differences for me. Now those people mean a world of difference to the team that they join and ultimately have a deeper impact to the business. But I think we've gone through maybe 4 or 5 iterations of what access networks is until we've gotten to the one today that we have today. And what I am especially proud of is how we've grown as a team and how we treat our people, which I think really, what creates a healthy culture is, to me, is how you treat your people and the environment you put them in. And so even before the pandemic, we had a very generous work from home policy. So most people had a PC at home that they could just jump on and have all their tools. And so when the pandemic showed up, we were very well prepared because we were just generous on the other end before that, allowing people to work from wherever they want. So that's the environment side of it we can't control, but we have beautiful offices that are now waiting for the team members to come back. And on the other end is creating that healthy culture is how you treat your people. And I think we're really at the top of where that could be, where we have a program called the Village Program, where essentially the premise is that it takes a village not only to raise a child, but it takes a village for you to live your best life, is what we believe in. And so the company is your village. And if you need something, if something happens, you can make a request. It will go up to executive discussion. But we've done all kinds of help, assistance, time off. You need to take a couple months to go deal with a family situation, go do it. It doesn't count towards your, sick time, vacation time, because you're not on vacation. You're doing stuff that you have to do. You name it, we've contemplated it, we've assisted. And really that's what is success? To me, this is success. It's far beyond dollars and cents. And so to be in this place today and have watched, we've struggled so much, even a decade ago, we didn't take off Christmas Eve. We didn't take that day off. We stayed in the office to work because we felt like we had to make payroll. To have transitioned and transcended to this place where we have redundancy within a team, we're able to be generous financially, be generous with time, warms my heart. So,
well, I always like to go way back and talk about where people came from and how they got into this industry. Talked about access networks, but what about before access networks for you, Hagai? What brought you to custom integration? And I mean, all the way back to you're from Israel, right? Originally, grew up in Israel.
Yeah, born and raised.
And as a citizen of Israel, you had some military service as is required, correct?
Yes.
And you said that had a big impact on how you went into becoming a business owner, I believe.
Yeah, and initially an integrator, if you will, of network within a home. But I think my work ethic and the desire to build systems that are complete and functional and reliable really came from the Air Force, where I actually got kicked out of middle school. And the only middle school that will take me was the Israeli Air Force Middle School, which then also turned into my high school experience. And that's how I funneled into the Israeli Air Force, became an F-16 mechanic and crew chief, ultimately. That was a great experience. And by the time I was 22 and landed here, I had been in the military environment for 7 years in uniform. Right. And so coming to the United States, following my dad's footsteps, was really just looking for an opportunity. I didn't have the education I needed, and I found everything that I could hope for here in the United States. And so my view is that this is the land of opportunity, and I'm living proof that you can do whatever it is you want to do. And I was lucky enough to get an internship with a company in Thousand Oaks here, where I learned computers and networking, IT. And the one thing that was always the most reliable, even back in 2001 and 2000, then when I was there, was the network. Printers would break, computers would crash, the network always functioned. And so I thought it would be awesome to build a business around networking. And so eventually rolling into this first home that was assigned to me by a commercial client here in the Beverly Hills Triangle, I really felt like I have arrived to where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And meeting Signals Audio Video, which by the way is still a client of ours. How many tech businesses could say their first client's still a client? It was revolutionary. I'll never forget it. So that's taking that work ethic of working on airplanes, feeling like you need to set this up, it needs to work. Otherwise, with an aircraft, someone's going to die if you screw up. And not that anyone would die if we configured a network wrong, but it felt like a mission critical item that I've worked on in my Air Force career, and a mission critical item that we're working on in the home.
Very good. And Bryce, I had no idea that you still had a family-owned integration company. Your wife is running it now, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So what was that? What was the transition away from that company into Access Networks? Like, what point were you? Was it that I need a new challenge? I want to see what this manufacturing side is all about?
Well, again, I think it was part of what I recognized in Hagai, I had recognized in myself, based on that conversation we were talking about earlier. I had recognized in myself at that point in time that I was kind of tired of doing the same old. And I had several, at the time I had several good employees. We were never a big company. We were always, I think at the most we were 7 people, usually ran around 3 or 4. And then as of now, we don't have any employees because we have one client that my wife manages that whole relationship.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very different business model. It's, I don't want to get into it here because it's a long conversation,
Okay.
but we still are an integrator. We're still a Control 4, dealer and all those things. But I think at that point in time, 2012, I was exposed to Access Networks earlier than that. So one of the largest project, or the largest project I ever did, had an Access Networks network in it. And up until about a year ago, that network was still running untouched. So and I had never been there for a service call for the network. So looking at my experience with Access Networks and the conversations I had with Hagai and other people at the company, Brett, our CTO, who's still with the company, that I kind of realized, hey, this is pretty cool stuff, and I think I could make an impact there. And I went and joined Hagai and team at CEDIA, and as the integrator in the booth is what we call it. And we've done it multiple times over the years. We've had an integrator in the booth, and it's basically somebody who's a good partner that lives and breathes integration, but also understands the value of Access Networks and can talk to other integrator and owners on that level, right? And so that at that point, when I went and did that first year, I think I did it kind of as just to see what it was like to go to CEDIA and have somebody else pay for you to go. So that was kind of cool. But when we were there, I realized that this is where it's going. I mean, I kind of had the same, a lot later than what Hagai's talking about, but I knew that this is where the industry was going, and that networking was so essential to what we were doing as integration companies, and it wasn't going to change. And it may never change. That might be always the case. And so later that about a little bit of time passed, and then we had a conversation about me going to work for them. And then at the same point in time, my wife was graduating from college with a degree in IT. And she was still heavily involved in managing her own family's business and an aging relative and things like that. So we needed a flexibility for her, but we also wanted to have additional income potential. So, so I say, hey, why don't you take on managing the IT side, and she was her career before that was bookkeeping and office admin and things like that. So she knew how to run a contracting business. That's where she came from. And now she had this background in IT because she went to school for it. So it was like a natural kind of like, hey, why don't you do this and I'll go do that, and we'll see how it works out. And if it doesn't work out, I'll come back and we'll just keep going, doing our thing. Fortunately, it worked out, and it's allowed her to have a ton of flexibility because of the way that business functions with our family. So we have, an older son, and we have a younger daughter that's still at home with us, older son that's at college. And so it's given my family a lot of flexibility. And it also still keeps me grounded because I have conversations with her, not daily anymore. It's probably maybe once a week, probably more monthly, where she says, I'm having this issue with this particular client. How do we address this? And my background in IT now from working with Access Networks has given me the ability to answer, because most of the questions that she gets are IT in nature. It's the company's IT department handcuffing what the construction side of the business is trying to do. Because they have security. And so I said, well, this is the way we need to work through that. We need to, have this conversation. So it still keeps me grounded, which is pretty interesting. Plus I get all the emails from our suppliers. So I see what they're doing. So I can use that for, for the tactical side. Right.
Right.
So,
well, yeah. The one thing that we haven't touched upon is the new product aspect of what's going on here. And I did tease that you had some, had a success, immediate success, I guess, in your new role, Bryce. Can you talk about any new products or technology stuff that you're working on that's going to be web-based?
Yeah. So we've got, we're always doing the access point evolution, right? We recently released a bunch of Wi-Fi 6 access points, still the only brand in the channel that has that many models of access point in Wi-Fi 6 variations. But the other part of this is what we're doing on the management side of the access points, meaning being able to control those. Everybody that is a current client is familiar with the Unleashed product category, which is running the controller locally on the hardware on the network. And then we've historically used hardware-based wireless controllers that have existed inside the home and is a central point of contact. Well, the big change for us is a new service that we're providing, which is called ARC. ARC is built out on a Ruckus infrastructure product that we are familiar with, and that is available in the broader IT market, but we're custom tailoring it to the residential market, which is what we've done for years and years and years. And it's really going to give the integrator a much quicker way to scale their deployment by using templated systems, by having granular control of the Wi-Fi on the sites from a single pane of glass, single login. That's all going to be accessible through our portal, so they can go to our portal and then log directly into it. And then they'll be able to manage those sites. We can co-manage sites, meaning if they do one of our custom core systems, we have access to it, they have access to it. We can actually see any of the other sites they want us to look at. So in the troubleshooting situation, right now, if it's a hardware-based controller on site, if we don't have remote access, they have to screen share and do all these kind of things. With this new service, hey, we're looking at what you're looking at, and we're looking at it both in real time. Incredibly powerful. And it's not a 10,000 foot view. It's the granular view of what Ruckus provides. It's getting into the nitty gritty of solving an issue. And we're both looking at the same thing at the same time. And whether the integrator wants us to do that for them in the custom side, or they want us to be a part of their process on the more of the product purchase, where they're buying the access points, deploying them themselves, and then calling us for support. Whichever way they want to do it, we're ready. And that's going to be launching in the next week and a half. And so we're there, getting it ready to go out the door. It's called ARC, ARCC. We like to throw the extra C in there at the bemoans of other people on the staff. why the differentiation? But it is the concept is it will be overarching eventually, meaning we're looking past access points. We're looking at switches. We're looking at, do we start to build out that infrastructure where it controls a router in the cloud for the site, where there's less hardware on the site? So there's an evolution to what this will be, much greater than just Wi-Fi control.
Okay.
But it's really where the industry is going. It's where the IT industry is going. It's where Ruckus as a whole sees the future, is in this cloud architecture, and being able to scale unlimited. I mean, it literally gives us the ability to have unlimited scale when it comes to site deployments, and streamline the process incredibly.
Well, I'm sure that's going to be very well received by your dealers. And Hagai, I'll ask one last question for you. Are we going to still see you around once CD is back in person? Are you still going to be a visible presence for the company? Are you going to kind of fade to the background and just be the owner and bother Bryce every now and then about something that you think of out on one of your hikes?
We'll at least have cardboard cutouts of them.
Oh yeah, right. Well, hopefully the tequila will be at the booth as well, even if he's not there to serve it. So.
No, my plan is to still be there. While I'm stepping aside and allowing Bryce to run the business and make decisions and essentially take on effectively what was my burden. I'm very passionate about our industry, and I love CEDIA. I love the show, love seeing everybody. So you should count on me being there. Plus, as much as I thought that, this transition would create less involvement. I have been proven wrong, and my days are very busy, maybe more so than before. And so that's going to stay. And I think also, just for the sake of our team, whatever my team needs from me, I will do. And, I think that needs to keep going, because if I was to just disappear, I don't think it'd be the same. And not to take all the credit for what Access Networks is, certainly not. I am not the only person here. We're a community, but I'm part of this community. So I'm not just going to be like, see ya, I'm gone, he's in charge, and talk to Bryce. Not at all. We have checks and balances, and I love what I do. I love being in this channel. I have a lot of passion for it. I think that's been the driver for all of our success, is the amount of passion we have for what we do, and what happens when what we do well, and what it enables the integrator to do on the job site, which in turn is really limitless at this point because of the infrastructure we can deploy. So that's not going away. I love staying in touch, and also, building my own home. I see the challenges. I have a color beam system that occupies a huge 8-foot closet, because right now it's this behemoth of a system. And hopefully eventually that's gonna, shrink to like a little box. But there's a lot going on, and there's still a lot to do. So I'm sticking around.
That's good to hear. Hagai, Feiner, Bryce, Nordstrand, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I hope you both have a healthy and prosperous 2021.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for having us.
Also, thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to comment, share, or subscribe to the podcast. And you can check out all the latest residential tech news at restechtoday.com. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential tech talk, lighting specialist, residential tech.